And it could be anything. It could
Oh,
be.
I already got it.
Oh,
Good. Yeah,
okay.
I got it.
What is your claim?
My claim is that the universe is 100% indifferent to any sentient life.
The universe is 100% indifferent to sentient life. The universe. Okay.
Do I have to go into how that goes about affecting my daily rhythm? Is that part of the process? I mean, like,
yeah, we can.
I've seen it before, but I mean, like, usually the things that people bring are more mystically minded, so it's a lot easier to get into the weeds of wondering how of the parsing of why do you believe this aspect as opposed to this aspect. You know, I don't know how one goes about going with it when it comes to my particular.
Okay, sentient life, and then indifference.
Yes.
How when what does indifference mean to you?
Indifference means the fact that there is no arbitrariness in how the universe goes about treating one, I guess, subset of like creature versus another. The every individual species creates niches and advantages for itself within the environment that it exists in that allow it to either favoritize, I don't even know if that's a word, but just create a favorable environment for itself and its kin for as long as it possibly can until environmental changes cause that niche adaptation to become the detriment of that species to the degree that then it eventually kills it. That seems to be the holding pattern of, unfortunately for our limited understanding, the one pool sample that we have, which is this planet. And the consistent scenario has been the one that I just laid out. We as a species right now are in the throes of trying to figure out if we can, through the tiny extra bit of cerebral brain power that we have, can upend that natural inclination of up and down by trying to essentially find an ecological middle way by not destroying our niche so much to the degree that we can still exist in some way. But for the most part, all creatures prior to us have not had the mental wherewithal to be able to see, quote unquote, the future far enough to be able to tell the indifference on and try to subvert it. I don't know how much more you want me to go.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Okay, so this idea of indifference, if I were to try to paraphrase, it's the way that you're describing it, it seems like indifference means the universe doesn't do anything either good or bad towards sentient life.
No, not whatsoever. I think the universe.
Is that an okay paraphrase?
I think so. Yeah, because I am of the belief that there are probably pockets of, life favoriting sections of the universe, wherein certain sections of the universe are too hostile to coalesce into the kind of life that maybe we could understand. Maybe there are still aspects of a life that could be had in very chaotic, tumultuous pockets of the universe. But if we were just to try to keep it simple and only look for alike pockets like our own, I think that there are plenty of them. Just the a lack of evidence doesn't necessarily mean that there is no evidence out there. And with a sample size, with the size of the universe, and considering that we already know that we can do it, and not only that we can do it, but the fact that life on this earth isn't so gentle, like, at least microbial. I mean, I take quite a lot of kinship with microbial life in the sense that that's life, and for all intents and purposes, that could be the most attuned and keen type of life to live in this type of universe. Quick flashes of here multiply gone, here multiply gone, and
Hmm.
I mean, for the most part, it just feels like that is the holding pattern,
Hmm.
and the fact that we there is no, that our galaxy isn't bustling with electromagnetic communications from other species, even if they are already long extinct, just little radio waves and stuff like that, make me think that for the most part, the universe isn't actively trying to bring about our level of cognizance or
Mm.
whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
That's kind of my my biggest thing, is the sense that like the universe isn't actively hostile to life, and it isn't actively favorable to life. It
Okay.
is just a cocktail of chemicals and atoms and everything that happen to have pockets that can coalesce in such a way that make this particular soup
Hmm.
be viable.
Okay. Yeah. I think yeah. Okay. Would it be would it be even fair to say just to like cut down the claim a tiny bit to say
Please.
the universe is indifferent to sentient life? I did the reason I want to cut out this other part is because I want to get your if we just would you is that an okay paraphrase for you for the claim?
Oh, I think so. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I started with the sentient life aspect just to keep it closer to home.
Mm-hmm.
But in all reality, I think that the universe is indifferent to life in general.
Life in
I
general.
mean, if we're going to believe the scientific consensus, there was a good couple billion years where there for sure was no life, because there hadn't been enough generational star decay to be able to create the kind of necessary heavier elements necessary to even consider more complex life.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the very basic iron in our blood is the kind of thing that requires billions of
Mm-hmm.
years and many supernovae, to be able to then coalesce in such a way that
Mm-hmm.
your planet can have enough iron to
Mm-hmm.
then have it so you can have enough iron
Mm-hmm.
to be able to have it. So it's like
Yeah.
it's there are so many things that have to go right in such a way that in a multiversal aspect, no big deal, because obviously with such a large pool sample in that way, everything is possible given the same kind of, I guess, elemental properties,
Mm-hmm.
just different number ratios about
Mm-hmm.
certain aspects and things,
Okay.
and also I don't want to limit the conception of life only to my way of being too. I
Gotcha.
mean, there certainly could be elementally different not
Mm.
non-carbon based life forms, carbon based life forms with different isotopes than my own,
Mm-hmm.
like just a bunch of different types of
Sure.
things.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the universe wasn't made to make those creatures. It's a happenstance of the soup, essentially.
Interesting. Okay. Um, if we just look at the base claim of the universe is indifferent to life in general, what is your confidence in that? Say from, well, let's do this first, just in case.
Mm-hmm.
What's your confidence that when I let go of this pen, it's going to fall down?
100%.
100%?
Yes.
On that same scale, what is your confidence that the universe is indifferent to life in general?
Oh, 100%.
100%?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It almost feels as though it were as much of an elemental piece of nature as one of the four forces like
Mm-hmm.
gravity and the strong and nuclear,
Mm-hmm.
strong force and stuff like that. Mostly because if it were otherwise, I think it would not only show itself, but skew the universe in such a way that perhaps it would be non-viable.
Mm.
Because if things were to be evil, there would be no means to be able to either. Well, I guess at that point it would like if there were such a thing as an ingrainment of good and evil within the cocktail of the universe, there would then be an automatic need, like a teleological need, to have sentient life forms exist in order for them to experience the good and evil and uh like qualify it as such perpetually, like because good and evil in and of itself can't be felt by nature. Nature only feels itself, and I would imagine that nature doesn't get its own feelings hurt by itself in that way.
Hmm.
um so the
So this is interesting. So I don't mean to interrupt you,
oh, please,
but I'm
please do
curious
so.
if
I'm rambling.
if you were to think of you were kind of getting on this train, which is why I wanted to interrupt. If you were to think of like the biggest reasons that get you to this 100% confidence, what are some of those things that come to mind?
Universal decay, the fact that sentient life isn't a ubiquity, um the absolutely massive distance scales that exist between habitable pockets of existence, to the degree that they are 100% alienated from each other,
Mm-hmm.
makes me feel as though propagation of that way of being isn't a 100%, oh well, not even a consideration of whatever one might consider the universal system, of creating stars and the coalescing and and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like those are just, I mean, I guess I don't even know. I mean, the most layman way of thinking, in my personal opinion, would just be happy accidents.
Mm-hmm.
In that, sure, I mean, a serendipitous thing could occur, but just as quickly as a serendipitous thing occurs, it vanishes in that way.
Mm, okay.
And also the fact that it's very difficult to be able to really feel as though sentient life holds a footnote in the massiveness that is the universal scale.
Mm-hmm.
you know like, even if there were to be a 10 million year empire of genuine sentient existence, where we take on 50 galaxies and we are actively zipping back and forth all of the time, and we are titans of our pocket,
Mm-hmm.
that is nothing, absolutely nothing, in
Thanks.
comparison to literally anything
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. Like, the gargantuanness of the scale eats at any type of, you know, self-aggrandizement, or even desire to want to seem as though you're genuinely making, again, a footnote in any part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because even, we have we live within a supercluster that has billions of galaxies within it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I just said, okay, we conquer 50 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
This is good. I like this. Because this is sort of like it's getting at like a disconfirmation criteria for your 100% confidence. So
Wonderful.
I'm wondering, you said a 10 million year empire. Is there a number, like a total number year, and like a number of species maybe, that they could get to that might
Shatter the
actually,
100%.
well, just bring it down to 99
Therein lies the issue, in that there isn't, because in the infinitude of time,
as a oh, okay.
it
Oh.
doesn't again, like,
Mm-hmm.
if we're genuinely trying to consider and accommodate the infinitude of the universe,
Mm-hmm.
just one universe,
Mm-hmm.
just the one universe within the conversation, as to how much of it will be made relevant by sentient life, it is nothing. It can't be essentially any of it.
Hmm.
Like, there like, I'm even thinking of a number. Okay, 2 trillion years
Mm-hmm.
still doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
40 decadillion years, it still doesn't mean anything, because we're not even really at the point where black holes even begin to like vanish from like reality. Like like if we're thinking about wholeness
Mm-hmm.
the wholeness of Big Bang to 100% heat death,
Mm-hmm.
right, that we can conceptualize as two potential edges between,
Mm-hmm.
viable universes,
Mm-hmm.
the pocket and slice by which a sentient existence not even can just exist, not even be relevant, just exist,
Mm-hmm.
is so infinitesimally tiny that honestly, to the universe in its grandiosity and enormousness, it might as well have not even happened.
Mm.
Like there wouldn't be anything about that that assortment of elements and atoms bouncing upon themselves and making that politics that would
Mm.
make any more difference than just one more star having existed in reality. Because if you consider the fact that a star, or like a star, every second bursts about 100 to 1,000, I'm not even entirely sure,
Yeah.
atom bombs worth of energy dispersal every single second of existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way by which we measure our going abouts is how we exert our energy and, accomplish X and Y and Z thing.
Mm-hmm.
That I wonder, right, if there would be a quantifiable way to be able to say, okay, each individual sentient creature, regardless of species, would be able to produce X amount of energy within their life, like
Mm-hmm.
X amount of, change within their, pocket of reality. Then multiply that by the amount of actual sentient creatures that would potentially could potentially exist, not even have or will, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like just could, relative to, habitable and, viable situations,
Mm-hmm.
and multiply that by that number, then get to the number of, I don't gigajoules or whatever you would call that, you know what I mean, in terms of like actual energy output,
Mm-hmm.
and then wonder how many stars that actually would account in terms of just,
Mm-hmm.
energy output and stuff like that. Like how many stars worth of change is sentient life actually achieving in comparison to the other phenomena in the universe that are actively doing change, like stars and dark matter and dark energy and stuff like that. It's like,
Well, can you? I'm confused. Maybe you can help me.
yeah.
I'm wondering about how we're sort of measuring this. You
Right.
like, okay, maybe we'll just stick with this example and like bring it out all the way, because I think that's what you were trying to describe, or I think that's what you were describing, and I was trying to understand is if we were to if in our universe, if you were to discover that there was a race of life, that there was life,
Mm-hmm.
and that life existed as an empire from Big Bang to heat death, does that adjust your confidence at all as far as
It
the?
certainly would, because that means that type of life
Mm-hmm.
is 100% breaking the laws of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least for 150,000 years, the universe was too thick for even
Mm-hmm.
light to be able to, squeeze through.
Okay, well, what if it was at what if we just took it to like a more logical starting point in like a place where life actually could start
Okay.
to the heat death?
Okay.
Does that adjust your confidence?
So you're saying that there has been long line
We can
of
just say one.
one
Yeah.
long line of from the moment that it was viable for life to have existed in the universe up until
Yes.
now, there are creatures who are able to still continue living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that most certainly would crack my ability to be able to say at 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I think the issue that I have, though, is the fact that my beliefs are non-falsifiable, because at
Mm-hmm.
that point I would need for them to exist until the end of the universe in order
Mm-hmm.
for for that crack to occur. And it's like, how am I going supposed to be there in order for that to then become a possibility, when in all reality, if these hypothetical creatures did exist, I can only imagine that they would be the hardest mother effers that have ever existed, in the sense that they would take no fools. You know, like they have potentially gone through every possible calamity that the universe can potentially conjure up, you know, in its vast indifference. Like solar flare, earthquake, solar flare. Your moon fell, you know, like
Your mood, but that's a pretty terrible one.
mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this is interesting. All right, so
So, you know, I guess I'm kind of outing myself in that way, because I feel like, in terms of my beliefs, I live in a cave. I live in a comfortable cave, in the sense that I don't venture out of what I already find is completely, um, what's it called? Um, Understandable relative to what we already have available. Like,
mhm,
I'm not, you know, I'm not a, I don't know, I guess, like belief wise adventurous person in that way,
mhm,
you know, like, and perhaps that stems from the fact that, as a youth, I was religious and stuff, and it might be, how do they say it in English? Twice bitten, once bitten, twice shy,
mhm,
in that way, you know, in the sense that as a child I have been this good at speaking the entire time, and as a result of that, I've been around adults who are awed by how good I've been at speaking. And one of the things that I latched onto when I was a child is trying to like learn the Bible and stuff like that. You know, as a uh, as a prestige seeking child, it was a very easy go to in relation to being able to read it, understand it, give my own interpretation of it, and then feel really good about the fact that other people are like, "Oh, you're so smart," and I'm like, "Oh yeah,
mhm,
that's certainly no way to, that's not a way I've thought about it. Oh, the Lord must really be speaking through you," and
mhm,
in that way. And as time went on, and the my religiosity just fell to the wayside, in the sense that it all just felt so silly to me,
mhm,
unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever.
mhm,
That at this point I really feel as though I have to be wrangled out of my cave of, no, the universe does not care. Like, there is a anthropological an- angle of the fact that we as a intraspecies are very cruel to each other,
mhm,
so we have a very difficult time coming to care for our own, so let alone trying to make it so another species would care about us, and
mhm,
then let alone for the elements in chemistry itself to care about us.
mhm.
Every single one of those propositions just seems further and further away to me, as a, I don't know, as something to write on top of,
Mhm.
as a belief system, to be like, yeah, like there's, it could be this, I would much rather say it is this,
Mhm.
and potentially be pleasantly surprised if it isn't, because the position that I am in is one of 100% neutrality.
Hmm.
I am here to be surprised, and so far I haven't been.
Do you? Hmm. The neutrality comment struck me. Is 100% confidence equal to a neutral position in this, or do you have
relative
a positive?
Relative to the fact that my confidence level of 100% is toward indifference,
Yeah.
I would say it does still veer toward neutrality,
Okay.
because I don't believe that the universe is actively hostile to life. I
Mhm.
don't believe that the universe is actively doting to life
Mhm.
in any type of way. I don't believe that the universe is out there. Haha! Now I'm gonna pop off the supernova, and then that's
Mhm.
gonna cause a solar flare that in 20 million years is gonna
Mhm.
get them. They're not even that. Their ionosphere ain't even gonna see what's coming.
Yeah.
Like, I can't attribute those kind of intentions to the universe, and as such, I find it to be indifferent.
Mhm. Yeah. Um we did the life viable from the beginning of when it could be till the heat death, and you said that would lower your confidence. Um do you have a guess as to like how much? This is just an aside.
Hmm.
How much that would affect your 100%? Would that bring you like all the way down to 50?
Well, we could actually just kind of play around with that one Isaac Asimov story, The Last Question,
Yeah.
wherein that one species, the human race
Mhm.
in that story was able to reach the heat death in their way um through their supercomputer, essentially. Like that was their child, essentially, that was able to carry them all the way to the end.
Mhm.
But the best that that computer could do was just another reiteration of the exact same thing, wherein it can hope that, like, that the same, essentially, that it was essentially hoping for an eternal recurrence, like some sort of Nietzschean aspect in that way of, like, this universe is good enough. Like, the
Mm.
fact that it's indifferent is actually the most favorable aspect, because it
Interesting.
it puts you in a position where the universe isn't putting ultimate responsibility on you,
Mhm.
and it also isn't being actively hostile to you.
Mhm.
uh you're not born with, like, I don't know, like a debt account to the universe in that way, but like, I made you and I wanted to make you, like.
Some people will tell you.
Yeah, exactly, right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, there is, like, they consider the universe to have a teleological aspect, that they're
Mhm.
that this thing, or this gigantic thing, is churning toward something.
Mhm.
I don't believe that. And that's only in the conceptions of one universe, not to start actually fractalizing toward the multiverse,
Mhm.
and then really losing your
Mhm.
marbles in terms of trying to grasp at, okay, what, this is the universe
Hmm.
in the window pane, that is the one
Hmm.
that's like, that really matters.
Let me, just as a curiosity, if you were to become convinced of a multiverse, would that?
If I am convinced of a multiverse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just keeping it off the table of this conversation,
Mhm.
because, again, it brings about a non-falsibility that makes these conversations feel moot to me,
Mhm.
because of the fact that it's neutrality times infinity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Is there?
oh, no, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm not trying to cut you off. I'm. It's. Is there a way? Is there a way that we can test this claim?
Which one?
The universe is indifferent to life in general. Is there like a test that we can perform, like just me and you today, where we could figure this out?
Well, initially it was sentient life.
Yeah.
Life in general, sure. I mean, if we could throw ourselves into space, the
Mm-hmm.
favorability of the majority of the environment that is the universe is unfavorable to life as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So just from the I don't know, like, the actual space that we can actually inhabit, just the space that we can inhabit in and of itself is so minuscule in comparison to the space that we cannot in
Mm-hmm.
any way possibly inhabit,
Mm-hmm. The
that
non-ubiquitous.
that yeah,
Yeah.
it raises more than one doubt to me about anything other than either active hostility or just indifference.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it can either play toward the more negative aspect, or just stay straight in the middle. And I
Mm-hmm.
am of the belief that it is just a continual middle of the way. You just cannot hang out here,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially nothing can. Like, even the most resilient creatures that we know of can't exist out in the vacuum of space.
Mm-hmm.
And the vacuum of space is literally everything that isn't the planet that you can actually actively inhabit
Mm-hmm.
and be a sentient creature within, to actually have the life or existence that would merit such a claim to
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yeah. Is there? Can you? What would the opposite
Mhm.
of an indifferent universe look like?
Let's see. If the universe were actively hostile to sentient life,
Yeah, or the other. Yeah.
yeah, it would probably mean that either life itself is actively being eradicated through. I guess at that point, I mean, you would have to apply sentience to the universe itself,
Hmm.
which is also another step too far, in my personal opinion,
Okay.
in the sense that if you allow the universe to be neutral, then it just churns about in the way that we can observe that it does.
Hmm.
Galaxies form, things coalesce, things disperse. There
Mm-hmm.
is no there is the dispassionate aspect to how things go about decaying and then
Mm-hmm.
reforming again. If I feel that if there were a means of being able to then scale it to good or evil, then you would have to apply some sort of, again, teleology to the genuine universe itself, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to only create, and I am only going to uh, I'm only going to make things in such a way that things are favorable. So, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this supernova that might potentially cause this beautiful little planet, with all these beautiful little creatures that I totally
Mm-hmm.
cherish as a creature, as an extension of my creation and existence. I need to move the supernova away in order to
Mm-hmm.
be able to make it so those rays never hit.
So
You know
it's almost like there would have to be, like you said, like the universe has a personality or a will or
Exactly.
a.
And there would always be a situation where Planeteer, right, the universe decides I'm gonna bring the supernova closer, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna push the supernova away.
Mm-hmm.
And like there would have to be a break in what we call, the universal laws of nature
Mm-hmm.
that skew toward the arbitrariness of maliciousness
Mm-hmm.
or graciousness in that way. And there don't appear to be either of those. When a solar flare happens, it isn't because the sun decides it's attempting to be evil,
Yeah.
and most of the times,
That's funny. Just pictured it for some reason.
yeah,
That's
just
funny. Like,
you know, because if the sun really wanted to be evil, it could be evil.
yeah, if it had
Like, yeah,
agency.
like if it had genuine agency to be
Mm-hmm.
out there and bored, right?
Yeah,
Like
sure.
there would be no reason why it wouldn't, with its massive capacities, to be able to then create the kind of free-willed horrors or goodness, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like that it could, like, if
Mm-hmm.
you and I consider ourselves as small pockets of energy that can go about and create, good or ill, as our intentions and chemistries allow, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's what we consider sentient life. That's what we consider an agentful and, autonomous life, is the fact that we can do that. But every other every other celestial body out there that precedes us in terms of genuine existence,
Mm-hmm.
not life, existence, of actually being out there and performing their quote unquote role, right? Like, they're pretty much stuck in that role. They're quasi mechanically going through those motions and again, in and again, dispassionate way.
Mm-hmm.
And that dispassion, to me, as an observer who supposedly has the capacity to be able to be willful,
Mm-hmm.
I see that as indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a creature who can commit good and evil in my way,
Hmm.
then see them as 100% indifferent. I don't see them as kin of being like, oh yeah, like the galaxy, so good, like it's really going at it and being in terms of being good. You know,
It did make pancakes, so we have pancakes.
we made those.
Yeah, well, the universe made us, which then made pancakes. So, okay, no, I'm getting way off topic. I do want to come back to this morality thing, but just to sort of, just so I understand you completely on the sort of what it sounds like to me, you were saying the main two reasons that you think about when you get to your 100% confidence in the universe being indifferent is the decay, the non-ubiquitous, and the
Well, no,
distance.
it's the ubiquity. Well,
Ubi-
non-ubiquitous means that it's like atypical, and like it doesn't
oh,
happen.
the ubiquitous
Yeah.
lack of life.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Okay. Um, when it comes to those three that came to your mind, aside from the thought experiment or the example that we used with the really old civilization, is there anything about the rate of decay, if that was any different, or the lack of ubiquity of the prevalence of life in the universe, or if distances were not as grand between things that we're able to communicate, would any of these reasons, if they were different, or if you came to discover, if you learned to your satisfaction that maybe your opinion on the rate of decay or the ubiquitous, if any of these things changed, would that affect your confidence?
I would believe so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would imagine that extraterrestrial philosophers could possibly give me
That might
a
help.
deeper insight into
Sure.
what they potentially would be able to see as
Mm-hmm.
a as another viable means of being able to see things, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
like for example, if like sentience was a daisy chain of one smart species coming and ascending another quasi smart species in one long chain of being like we're all trying to reach a transhumanism of of sentience,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Yeah, of course, that certainly would shatter quite a. I would say that would bring me down to a 70% in terms of my confidence level, because I still feel like the majority of me would feel as though the universe is indifferent because
Mm-hmm.
of the mechanical aspect of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In that the stars can't help the way they are. Like
Mm-hmm.
the galaxy's dark matter, dark energy can't seem to help to do what they do, and again they seem to do it so dispassionately.
Mm-hmm.
But if we lived in a universe wherein things were suspiciously close to each other in
Mm-hmm.
such a way that we could get to each other so quickly, and everything kind of a No Man's Sky-esque kind of situation
Sure.
where although the universe still has its laws and there's still its strong level of indifference, there is an obvious teleology to what you should be doing with your time, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that the resources are there. The the scale isn't so insurmountable to the degree of making you feel the 100%ness of
Mm-hmm.
that I feel right now.
Mm-hmm.
And and at the end of the day, perhaps that is just my limited way of thinking, right? It's like there
Mm-hmm.
are individuals who are far more pioneering than I am, who see the scales that I am talking about as just a hump in the road kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation in that way. But again, I bring up the fact that it in terms of time scale, even if all of those things were true and we had a harmonious, egalitarian, transhuman society and enclave of 1,000 species put together
Mm-hmm.
that lasted 50 billion years, that still is nothing in
Mm-hmm.
comparison to what the universe is expected to exist in its
In
entirety.
time, yeah.
And if at the very last day of the universe, one were to take into account the things that happened in the universe,
Mm.
the actual amount of time wherein that 50 billion year enclave,
Mm-hmm.
existed is still just
Yeah, so it for you, it's like the relation to
quantity.
the whole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's the relation to quantity that breaks me,
Mm-hmm.
because I can 100% appreciate the qualitative aspects of the moment as
Oh,
they
this is really okay.
no,
I don't mean to cut you off,
no,
but
please.
I just thought of a quick question. Like if somehow we were to find out that, and we'll just use the 50 million year civilization, trans species,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mass Effect all day.
yeah, and we can still put the heat death of the universe at like 10 Google whatever years past,
Mhm.
um, if
Googleplex.
as outside observers, if we were able to look at the entirety of the universe's existence and in the whole capacity, and oh, this question is not going to make any sense now that I'm like starting to ask. I'm just wondering if like we were gods of some kind and we were able to look down and we saw that this 50 million year civilization, we could even use it as like the only one or the most prosperous one. What would you need? What sort of information would you need as this like god creature looking down to determine that it like, is it just the time thing? Is it just like the 50 million years is so small in comparison to the time, or is there anything about the civilization itself that might cause you to think that the universe wasn't as indifferent as you thought? Like, is there some sort of meaning it could produce, or
I
is
think
it
the fact that the universe produced that civilization, in my personal opinion, would actually be a very as this hypothetical god creature. What as I'm jotting down my notes after
Yeah.
after my little quick experiment,
Yeah.
my quick 10 Googleplex experiment, I would say that civilization actually proves the fact that the universe is indifferent, in that it is willing to allow these pockets to exist. Like it isn't like it wasn't a situation where once this thing was able to flourish, it flourished the entire time and it never stopped until the very moment that that the atoms themselves began to break down and stuff like that. Like, and that it wasn't quickly snuffed out right away and never allowed to continue in its own way. The fact that it is its own bubble shows to me the fact that the universe takes all kinds. Like that it is again dispassionate to the outcomes that happen within it. That these creatures, in their way and in their struggle, were able to mark, from 0 to 50 million. I initially said 50 billion, but whatever. The number itself is just irrelevant. That's always the thing. It's like, it doesn't even really matter, the number. Like, it's because at the end of the day, if it ends and the universe still keeps going for an enormitude of time that outpaces and eclipses everything you did ever anyway, that I can't help but reach the conclusion that the universe was indifferent to the plight of those creatures always. And that those creatures made their own luck the entire time. Just to go back to the hypothetical example of that one species, these Time Lords that managed to be able to come from the very beginning up until right now, right? It's like they made their own luck. The universe was actively. I mean, it seems like in that way, I would actually think that my feelings would inverse to more hostility toward the universe, in the sense that we're fighting this mother in every every direction. Like we at least at this point are, just like a couple thousand years ago, we hyper-anthropomorphized the elements into godlike creatures in order to be able to compartmentalize them in such a way, and we made the gods hostile in order to be able to make that kind of idea be easier to digest in that way. I would imagine that the longer and longer the time goes on and you're more scientifically minded and you come across one more planet that has these horrendous living conditions, that we have to try to work through. And yes, we're going to lose 10 million people to, the habitation project in order to be able to get this thing going again and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, every single one of those people who has to have that happen is you and me. You know what I mean? It's like none of them are, even if they are ants, they're still individual creatures. Like,
yeah. Does your opinion on morality have anything to do with this claim?
I don't know, because I don't think so personally, because I can't attribute morality to the universe.
Okay.
And in my lack of attribution, I can only lean toward neutrality.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those catch-22 things where everything kind of revamps itself and reverberates back to that place. Because in order to be able for it to be anywhere else, I would have to apply intention to reality, and reality doesn't seem too keen on having intention applied to it, because if you do, it's going to slap you in the face one way or the other. If you think that the universe is evil, you'll see a child smiling and having a great time and be like, damn, that doesn't compute all that well. you know. And if you
Sure.
think that the universe is 100% good,
Mm-hmm.
you'll watch the news for 30 seconds and you'll come to find out that
Mm,
that's not true either.
yeah,
You know,
it
and
doesn't
that's
take
only
much.
within the scapes of our species,
Mm-hmm.
you know, not to consider again the universal churnings
Mm-hmm.
that are happening in such grand scales, like quasars blowing energy in
Mm-hmm.
both directions at, you know, for infinite amounts of time, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that if, you know, if we happen to cross it, there'd be nothing we could do about it, just
Mm-hmm.
like coming across the exhaust of a car, or, you know what I mean, or like a jet engine or something like that and getting sucked in. You know, the plane
Mm-hmm.
isn't evil for doing that to you, but it still happened.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I only have maybe two more questions for you about this. Um,
Good, because I don't have that much beer
we're gonna have to refuel. Um, earlier, in the very beginning of this conversation, I thought I heard you say something like, um, and we sort of doubled back on it, but I'm not sure where we came out the other end. Um, that this claim is kind of unfalsifiable,
non-falsifiable. Yeah,
non-falsifiable. Is
because it
there
requires the whole life of the universe for
right
it to
to figure
be.
out?
Yeah.
Is there another? Are there any other beliefs that you hold that are unfalsifiable that you are at 100% confidence for?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I have a pretty good malleability when it comes to most other things.
What is it about this claim in particular that you feel comfortable going to the 100% confidence, even though you recognize the sort of issue with the unfalsifiableness of it?
I say that mostly to be true to myself because that
Mm-hmm.
is how I feel. I
Sure.
genuinely do feel as though
Sure.
I have a 100% feeling of confidence in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that when I walk outside, the universe ain't looking out for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not looking out for me, and it's not out to get me
Mm-hmm.
in either way. And you mentioned initially that the biggest aspect of these kind of questions is how they go about, how that filter goes about, skewing my ways of
Mm-hmm.
thinking and operating within the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of that that I find that the that my confidence level is so strong because I exercise this way of thinking
Mm-hmm.
all of the time, and it never lets me down.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have been religious. I have had religiosity, and I have had what's it called, deistic, you know, thoughts before,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like, you know, a god is looking out for me or a god is just watching me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And although those things are also non-falsifiable and they still could be potentially true, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a means of being able to tell whether multiversal creatures are looking at me or
Mm-hmm. Sure.
not. That in and of itself, I feel, is not useful. As it's not as useful as my awareness, you know, or at least perceived awareness of
Mm-hmm.
the universe. If I cross the street, I need to look both ways because the universe will not care. I have no teleological point of being here that makes it so the universe is actively looking out for me so I can complete my purpose
Mm-hmm.
in such a way that I then extend that to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I do so in such a way that I hope it I do so in order to be able to um defend my psyche against what I find is the evil of the world, in that it's just one more type of way that the universe expresses itself because of the fact that it is so unbounded.
Mm-hmm.
And also, and it also helps me and it also helps me in that, in a practical way of a day-to-day life. I know the fact that if I try to attempt things, I still have a strong bit of say in which way or another it's going to go. The universe isn't hostile to my desires to self actualization, and at the same time, it isn't going to make self actualization
Mm-hmm.
easy for me, but because it is on my side for
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yep.
So because of that, it really does help in my, you know, perceptual skewing in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and in a way that uh theological and deistic thinkings haven't,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like once you try to artificially put the chips or the cards too much in your favor, you become either arrogant or blind to what is again not the hostility, but the indifference of the universe that can manifest
Mm-hmm.
as potential subjective hostility.
Mm-hmm.
If you genuinely believe that the universe is on your side, you're not going to see that. And if you are so paranoid that you believe that the universe is hostile to you,
Mm-hmm.
you are not going to be able to then live a life worth living in any
Mm-hmm.
type of way.
This is my last question, and you set it up beautifully. So,
Wonderful.
if you were to discover that this claim is false,
Right.
how would that change your behavior?
I guess it would depend on which way the coin fell
On
in
either
that way,
side?
right? Yeah,
Sure.
because if I exist in the coin is literally on, not hitting one of the faces or tails.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what you mean. Like if you were trying to come at me and say, no, the universe actively wants sentient life to prosper and for you to self-actualize, I have a laundry list of questions for you in terms of why me,
Yeah.
like first of all, why me?
But would you
know,
do anything different?
in terms of
Your day-to-day practical decision making?
uh I mean, it's very difficult to conceptualize that world because
Mm-hmm.
I would literally be stepping into another world at
Mm-hmm.
that point. Because because if I left here and started thinking the universe is on my side,
Mm-hmm.
or the inverse, the universe is 100%
Well, let's
against
say
me.
you knew it. Let's say
See,
you
but
knew
but
it was
but
the
who is
case.
giving? But who in this scenario is giving me that confirmation?
Mm.
Is it another sentient creature?
Would you feel comfortable in the hypothetical saying it was the case and seeing how you feel?
Well, no, because I'd be
You'd
dubious
need
to
to know.
anybody coming.
You'd need to
I
be confident in
I
where the
I
confidence is
would.
coming from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, because you could tell me that right
Sure.
now. You know what I mean? Like,
I can tell you
yeah,
that.
exactly. You can.
What is this? Oh no.
Oh, I do. I do have both sets.
Well, that was the last question I had, and part 2 can come later. But that was great. Any final thoughts on the talk?
No, that was really fun.
Any questions for me? Anything I
No.
could have done better?
No, you wrangled me really, really well. I am a rambly person, and you kept me
it's
well in my corral.
it's a little tricky sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, like I feel like I'm special in my way because I understand the fact that the things that I hold have their
Hmm.
non-falsifiability to
Mm-hmm.
them. Like I will, like, as I was here, the first to tell you the fact that what I'm saying isn't the kind of thing that can be testable,
Mm-hmm.
but through my perceptual experience, that's the place that I have landed
Mm-hmm.
in. And I feel most comfortable in it because I don't feel this ferventness, to try to defend it because the universe is so blatant about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because of, like, if I were trying to say the opposite in either direction, I would have to continuously stack evidence against the opposite of being like, no, the universe is evil, man. Like all these
Mm-hmm.
wars and all this, like, all this famine and stuff like that. And you could say, well, like, but still good things still happen in the world. And like there are still moments, moment to moment blissfulness that
Mm-hmm.
I would have to actively, in hostility, keep away, as keep completely
Mm-hmm.
separate. And again, in the inverse of that exact same situation, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, being like, no, the universe is wonderful, and it is actively waiting for us to go out into the stars and conquer the whole thing in
Mm-hmm.
order for us to be able to propagate in such a way. You could tell me, well, listen, a quasar at any moment could stop this whole panspermia feeling that you have, and even literally one micro dust inside of the hull of your spaceship could quickly and slowly choke everybody out, you know and I would have to again be hostile to that negativity in such a way that I would have to again parse out those two things that in reality exist within the same universe
Mm-hmm.
and are in fact just a dispassionate happenstance within the possibilities and outcomes that can occur.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel more comfortable there. That's in I don't I feel like that life as a sentient creature is already in itself, with its difficulties, that having to add to the existential quandary by wondering if the air around me is on my side or not, that it's too much for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Some people have the inland empire, to use a disco elysium term, an imagination, perhaps far greater than mine, in order to be able to conceptualize in that way. But this creature right here doesn't view it like that.
I am a big fan of this creature right here, and I like the way that he says, if I were to put my confidence on your claim, I'd probably be at the exact same number. I might say 99 just because I'm a coward, but part 2, all the rest of the questions come next.
Yeah, no,
and
see,
that's the general stuff.
And I'm
so.
sorry to make it extend this unnecessarily.
No, I can just cut it.
I don't mean to be a zealot toward indifference, but
a zealot for indifference.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. I'm from the neutral planet. That that even applying that 1% of potential chink to the armor of neutrality, just like a spaceship allows too much dead space to start coming in, from one direction or the other. It's like, my opinion, better to be holed up inside of your tube of neutrality and then shoot through neutral space than it is to assume that the air is just fine out there, and also to never leave your hole because you assume that everything is going to kill you. Yeah.
I think I understand you. I think I understand you pretty well, actually.
I hope so. After how long?
It could have been 5 minutes. I have no idea, but I have to pee so bad. Part 2 coming next.